Woogi the Wasp. Woogi was a wasp that lived in an old home of a middle-aged couple. He flew around just outside the couple's home every day. He ate all the little things like caterpillars and spiders that usually stayed around the plants the couple grew in their indoor garden. Every day, Woogi would wake up and fly out to the garden from his nest and went in search for his food in the plants. One day, Woogi ventured out of the indoor garden. The lady of the house had left the door of the garden shed open. He flew out and was amazed at how big the world outside of the shed was. He had been born in the shed and had lived inside the indoor garden ever since. This was the first time he was venturing out. Woogi flew here and flew there. He visited the little white flowers that grew beside the door outside of the shed. He flew to the oak trees, the pine trees, and everywhere around the couple's home. He did not go too far. The place where the couple lived was big, but he did not know that. He was flying around happily when suddenly a gush of heavy wind blew strong and kept on blowing. Woogi tried to focus on flying straight, but it was impossible. He tried and tried, but the wind kept pushing at him, and suddenly Woogi found himself wet and in water. The wind had blown so strong that he was thrown into the pond. Poor Woogi. He tried to swim out or fly out of the water, but his wings wouldn't lift him up. The water had made his wings heavy, and he couldn't come out of the water. He began to panic and swim around to find a place where he could climb out, but the water was deep after the heavy rains the night before. Woogi swam and swam to no avail. He began to accept he was not coming out of the water at all. He thought this was the end for him. Not a few seconds after he thought that, the woman came to the pond. She was carrying with her a bottle to fill up with water. She sat down by the pond and dipped the bottle in, filling it up, when she noticed Woogi was in the water, half drowned. She spoke to Woogi, but Woogi wasn't sure what she was saying. He only knew that her voice sounded kind. Then, the woman scooped Woogi out of the water with the blue cover from the bottle. As soon as she brought Woogi out of the water, she chucked the bottle cover, with Woogi in it, into the lavender bush beside the pond. Woogi crawled out while the woman turned to fill her bottle again. She covered her bottle after checking that Woogi was no longer in the bottle cover and left to return to her home. Woogi was in the lavender bush for hours that day. After he got dry from the sun peeking into the lavender bush, he started exploring inside the bush. Not only did the lavender smell so heavenly, it was also fascinating inside the bush. It was thick and lush and grew so tall over him. And there were lots of food for Woogi to eat. Woogi decided to stay outside from that day on. He loved being in the bushes, and he loved walking around in them. It wasn't scary in the bushes, even when there was heavy wind. The bushes protected him from being blown about. One day, a few days later, Woogi walked to where he'd seen the woman would sometimes sit, at the white table with the white chairs. He crawled under the table, and waited until the woman came out. The man was already at the table, sitting on the chair. The woman came and sat on the opposite side. After a few minutes, the woman noticed Woogi in one of the angel hair bushes. She looked at Woogi and smiled. Again, she spoke. Although Woogi did not understand her words, he liked the sound of her kind voice speaking to him. He felt that she might be worried he'd sting her, but she did not do anything but sat on in her chair anyway. She turned her attention back to the man and spoke to him. The next time she looked for Woogi under the table, she noticed he wasn't there anymore. She told her husband the wasp must have flown away. He told her no. The wasp was on her ankle, where she had it crossed. She quickly uncrossed her ankles and found Woogi there. She laughed and was in wonderment that the wasp did not sting her. She nearly squished him between her ankles, but Woogi did not sting her. She realized then that this must be the wasp that she picked out of the pond. She laughed merrily and bent down to speak to Woogi with her kind voice. She pushed Woogi off her ankle gently, and he landed back onto the angel hair grass. Then she put her finger to Woogi's head to stroke him, and he put his tiny little hand to touch her finger. She laughed once more when she realized that she just shook hands with the wasp. Woogi was happy. Ever since that day, the wind had blown him into the pond, and he was then rescued. Woogi lived in the bushes, happily ever after. The end. Additional note: although Woogi is a friendly wasp, not all wasps are friendly. The wasp sting can be painful and sometimes cause an allergic reaction. If this happens, seek medical help immediately. Lemon juice and basil paste can be used to soothe the sting.